What's going on, guys? We are back to finish off the UFC 235 prediction video, or video series now, since it's 2 episodes. But now we're going to look at some of the very, very, very interesting fights on the rest of UFC 235. Now, in the last video, which you can watch here, we did the main event and the co-main event. So John Jones, Anthony Smith, Tyron, Woodley, Kamaru, Usman. And for this, we're going to look at some of the fights that are really exciting me, and I'm going to make my picks for those. If you guys are new, remember to hit the like button, drop a comment if you want to talk shit about me, and then subscribe for more. And live channel in the description. We watch the fights, Fight Companion for all you guys if you want to. If you're interested in that, follow me on Twitter, all that kind of stuff. Let's get straight into the prediction video. Now, the third fight on the card, we'll go from top. No, let's go from bottom to top here. So the first fight I'm super interested in is Diego Sanchez versus Mickey Gall. Now, finally, these two are going to step into the octagon after a long time of Gall calling him out. Gall has wanted to fight Sanchez for a while, and Diego Sanchez is one of those guys, one of those veterans of the UFC who's on the list for most appearances inside a UFC octagon, who always has a shot of winning, and he's coming off of a win against Mickey Gall. Earlier last year was probably one of the fastest rising stars in the UFC. He got the fight against CM Punk, dominated CM Punk, but then lost to Randy Brown, and has just been he's been pretty lost in the cards throughout. But the UFC did a damn good job at spotting Gall and Sanchez on the prelims to open up the excitement for some of the fights that are going to take place in the future. I'm going to pick a winner, and I'm picking Mickey Gall because I think Mickey Gall is more serious about the fight. I know Sanchez is serious about every fight, but Mickey Gall has wanted this fight for a minute. And for that reason, I think that he's going to train super hard. He's going to train super hard to get back on the map when it comes to the UFC, especially in 2019. You can make big money as a star of the UFC. And the way that this kid was looking like he was going to go, he was going to be a superstar of the UFC, but he kind of fell off when he lost that Randy Brown fight. He didn't carry the CM Punk momentum. He has fans. Don't get me wrong. He has fans inside the UFC for that CM Punk win, and for the way that he got into the UFC, for the way that he talked leading up to the CM Punk fight, and for the way he just talks in general. Great fighter and an interesting guy when it comes to character, and a must-watch guy. So I'm excited to see if he can beat the guy he's been calling out for a minute. The next fight on the card with the big interest from me is obviously, bro, I make videos on this guy every time he fights. It's Johnny Walker, formerly known as a great whiskey brand, now known as 6'5" UFC light heavyweight, who cuts from like 230 pounds within the week of the fight night, and within the week of the fight, a massive light heavyweight who rehydrates probably to back around 215, 225, 220, right anywhere in that range, against a slowly becoming seasoned Misha Cirkunov. Now, this fight's a tough one for me to call because I have some emotion into it, where Misha's Canadian, and the last time he fought, I picked against him, not knowing that he was Canadian, and it bit me in the ass because I did bet on that, and I bet on it because the guy he was fighting was such an underdog, and obviously the reason he was an underdog is because he was shit, and he got submitted quickly. So Misha Cirkunov is obviously no joke, and he's looking to make some waves inside the UFC. So I'm interested in this fight, and I'm going to pick with my heart for this one. I'm picking Misha. No. My heart says either. I don't really fucking care who wins. I'm picking Johnny Walker. But if Misha Cirkunov wins, it's the guy that I'd rather win. So let's go Misha. Professional Johnny Walker I'm taking. Next fight, and probably one of the most interesting fights on the card, the main event of the prelims, the main event on ESPN. Like, it's not even prelims anymore for these fucking pay-per-view cards because you're on free TV on ESPN with the leading sports network in the States, the leading sports network probably around the world. You're fighting in the main event on ESPN, so obviously they're going to put on some fucking shows. And what do? They put Zabeast, Magomed Sharipov, obviously Zabit, but nicknamed Zabeast, versus Lil Heath and Jeremy Stevens. Now, I did a career retrospective on Zabit Magomed Sharipov yesterday. If you haven't seen that, the link will be here. But this will obviously be his hardest hitting opponent. And Zabit has not been one of those guys to finish fights by knockout. He's done it, but he's not predicated on that side of game. So I think, Jordan, prediction for this fight, if it means anything, Zabit's going to take the fight to the ground and either submit Jeremy Stevens or survive 3 rounds without getting hit and he's going to touch up Jeremy Stephens. He's going to get the win. And I think that if Stephens does a good job at fighting Zabit, if it's a close decision and like they have the consensus split, I think they're going to give it to Zabit anyway. But I do really think that this fight's going to go to the ground. And for Magomed Sharipov's case, I hope he does take this fight to the ground. I hope he doesn't stand like he did with Bochniak, because if he stands like he did with Bochniak, his chin's going to be fucking tested. I can tell you that. Then we open up the main card. Now, the main card, the 3 fights are fucking language. Bleep that out. But the fights on the main card are stacked. You have, to open the card, you have former champion and superstar in his own right in the UFC. Like, this guy's a star in the UFC. Cody Garbrandt taking on rising star, rising bantamweight contender, Pedro Munhoz. Like, man, how do you get fights that are this good? Now, for this fight, making a prediction, my speculation is on Cody's back. How is Cody's back holding up? Because when they did promos for TJ Dillashaw, Cody 2, Cody referenced that his back was in pain for the first one. You use excuses when you lose. Everybody does. Don't act like if you lose, you don't. But he used the excuse of his back, and I'm actually wondering if that's an issue he's been having. And I have an issue thinking about how motivated Garbrandt's going to be, knowing that he's really not getting a title shot unless TJ Dillashaw loses the belt. Maybe to Cejudo, but unless TJ Dillashaw loses the belt. So I don't know how motivated he's going to be for this fight, and for that reason, as much as I think Cody can land, obviously this fight's going to be straight down the middle. Somebody's going to land first. Somebody's going to go to sleep. But if I do have to pick, I'm picking with Pedro Munhoz, because I don't think that Cody's going to be that much into it, and that's a tough fight to call still. It's still a tough fight to call. It could go either way. If I was a betting man, I wouldn't bet on this one. If I ran betting polls, I would probably do 55-45 Pedro, maybe even 50-50 split for whoever the fuck wants to pick against either of these guys. So it's up to you, maybe. It's up to you, really. You think that's going to win that fight, but I'm picking Pedro Munhoz. Then, you have probably one of the easier fights for me to pick. You have Tecia Torres, she's fought in the UFC. She's a good fighter, but she's against absolute killer. Weili Zhang, or however you pronounce her name. If I'm butchering it, I apologize. She is the real deal when it comes to women's MMA. And by the end of this year, she's gonna make a weight. She's gonna make a splash in the UFC by the end of this year, and it's gonna start with this fight. She is ridiculous. If you go back and watch her last fight, I can't remember the name of who she was. Jessica Aguilar, whatever. She dominated her, man. She took her down, pounded her with elbows, got her in an arm triangle, and then decided, you know what, I'm not gonna go for the finish. I'm gonna elbow the swear word out of you. And then she goes for an armbar and submits the fight, finishing it first round. She's brutal. This chick is ridiculous. And if it's just an easy pick for me. Like, this one isn't even a tough pick for me. You're winning. You're winning. Simple. Tecia, you're not coming out with a dub. I'm sorry. Then you have probably one of the most interesting things about this card. You have the debut of the funky one, Ben Askren. And he's taking off I don't want to say wounded Robbie Lawler, but he's taking on a Robbie Lawler that's coming off of ACL surgery. And if somebody knows ACL surgeries, I know them because I've been through one and how severe they are, how bad they are. Like, they're fucking hard, man. They're hard to come back from. Obviously, the UFC, they're probably have better medical rehabilitation than I did with the Canadian free government, whatever. But it's still a serious injury. Look at Dominic Cruz, how many times he fell off and came back with the three ACL tears. MMA is a sport where you don't want to sustain long-term injuries. And if there's a long-term injury worse than an ACL, I've yet to find one. Obviously, there's some fucking crazy ones like spine injuries and stuff like that. But ACL injuries are really, really serious. They're not something to play around with. And for that reason, not alone, but for that reason, I'm picking Ben Askren. Give you a couple more reasons. Ben Askren trains with now welterweight champion Tyron Woodley, who slept Robbie Lawler. He's 18-0. The only real thing I have against Ben Askren, obviously that first minute's going to be dangerous for Askren, because I watched that. He fought a 47-19 fighter and won, and it ended by an eye poke. And that just showed you that Ben Askren's susceptible on the feet. If he can't land a takedown, he's gonna get a little scared. He's gonna get a little attack heavy. And if there's one guy that's gonna make you pay if you get feverish or if you get excited, it's gonna be Robbie Lawler. If this guy gets up, I'm scared for Ben Askren. But with the knee and with Ben Askren's long-time 18-0 record, his credentials in wrestling are ridiculous. Something like a 79 win streak, 79-0. He's been inducted into Missouri's Hall of Fame for one of the best athletes they've ever had. So I got Ben Askren. If you don't know the name Ben Askren, you definitely should. This guy's hilarious. Maybe I'm picking for the fact that I want to see him fight again. I want to see him fight Kamaru Usman. I want to see how that goes. I want to see Ben fight Kobe, all that kind of stuff. But for the reasons I've outlined and some of the personal reasons, I'm taking Ben Askren in that fight and the injury reasons for Robbie Lawler with the time off. Both guys have time off. Both guys are new into the octagon. But that does it for the prediction video. I want you guys in the comment section below to not only make your picks for who's going to win UFC 235, all the fights that I touched on, but I also want to know how excited you are for tomorrow night, because it's going to be ridiculous. And we will be streaming it all live, JFT Live, link in the description, self-promotion. But it's going to be exciting. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you took the time to watch the whole video, thank you so much. And if you want to watch more, just hit the subscribe button. If you want to talk shit, go to the comments. Thank you. Peace.